Alright, so here's my next video. As promised, I answer the question, am I trans? All this talking I've been doing on Facebook, I've had a few private messages over the last few months, before the BC Ferries incident instigated my desire to make my life very public. I got it a few times, always prefaced with, I hope I don't insult you. Which I want everyone to know, first off, questions like these are absolutely not an insult. I encourage them. I want people to ask questions. For those of us in marginalized communities, it's all we can ask for is an actual, honest, open, respectful, curiosity and desire to learn. And then a respectful ability to listen to the answer. And that's what I've been getting. So for those of you who have asked that question, I totally appreciate it. Thank you. But am I trans? I guess the simple answer is no, I'm not. It is different for everyone, and so it's not actually a simple answer. There's a lot that goes into it. It's different for everyone. The language people use, it's different. But for me, I identify with my body mostly. I still struggle. I'll get into some of the reasons why I struggle. But I identify as female. I am trying to take back women's ability to be masculine and walk the world as a woman. I'm trying to empower myself and be more and more comfortable with myself in that, and not give in to everyone thinking, the world thinking, and that's what I mean by everyone, that I'm somehow different. And I've been grown to believe that, so I struggle a little bit. Transgender, as you know, is somebody who does not identify as the gender that was given to them at birth, and thus through their own self-exploration have learned that they are more comfortable living as or closer to the opposing sex. The gender binary only gives us two options. And I think that's a huge flaw of our language. English has so many words to explain all the minute differences in everything, and yet it fails us repeatedly with gender. But bigger issue, our language is used very strictly and doesn't want to expand the terms because it does things like prop up systems of power, like race and patriarchy. Whole other blog. Sorry about that. I just got a notification. But where was I? But yeah, so for me, I don't identify with the opposite gender. I struggle significantly with my ability to, I guess, feel female. And in part because you hear a lot of trans stories, and it's making it more and more in the media. It's not just Oprah once in 1997 who had a 45-minute show that really awfully described trans situations. There's a lot more dialogue out there, which is fantastic, but it's limited. It's limited to propping up that gender binary where there are two opposing groups that play off of each other, that supposedly fit like pieces of puzzles, and there's only two pieces to that puzzle. Well, what a boring fucking puzzle that would be. You hear the stories. Aidan Dowling is an incredible activist. He's doing so much work for the LGBTQ community, particularly the T and Q portions. Well, okay, maybe not so much the Q portion, but the T portion. Trans rights and everything. He's tireless. He's got a clothing line for trans people, or at least geared towards trans people. Anyone obviously can wear it, but it's frustrating for someone like myself who can relate to so many of those stories, where you feel different, the depression that comes, the fight to just exist as who you are, with every system of power in your life, all aspects of the infrastructure, whether it be school, the healthcare system, your parents, family members, anyone who's older than you, the church, you name it. There's so, bus systems, bathroom systems, everything that is is, I guess, a part of our world and somehow enforces our gender on us. And those of us who don't conform are basically boiled down to our genitalia. And so the trans stories that we hear are very much those that want the beard, want the really well-defined chest and the muscles, and look like what we stereotypically consider men should look like. And that left a lot of confusion for me. I spent years with this, at first not really understanding my curiosity with it. I mean, I also was like obsessed with prison documentaries. I didn't want to go to prison. But I had this, like, for a while it was almost like this dark little secret as to why I was so interested in trans documentaries and trans stories. I became more and more interested in chopping my hair off again. I grew up as a tomboy. I hate that word. Please don't ever call me that. It was never used positively. It was always used to describe what was wrong with me. Oh, Cris is a tomboy. Oh, she'll grow out of being a tomboy. There was always a tone used with it. I hate that word. I'm me. I'm not a tomboy. I'm me. I just like short hair and clothes that don't accentuate my breasts. Or my ass, for that matter. Not that I have one. But I'm working on it. Yoga. Anyways, so it was kind of always, and I remember through my 20s sitting there with my fiance at the time, watching these documentaries and being so interested in them, yet so terrified to really tell anyone I was so interested in them. And I could tell that there was like little pieces of me burning inside because I totally related to so many of the descriptions that were being talked about. Like I said, like, I remember when I was a teenager, before I was really realizing that I was gay, and thinking how much easier dating would be if I was just a dude. I felt like I could relate to women so much better as women being my partner. I always felt like how I wanted to operate was how men were supposed to operate. It's funny, I used to always think that when dudes would try to get me to sit on their laps, like, even if it was my partner, like, I would be like, no, you should be sitting on my lap. It was always so weird. And so trans documentaries did a lot of that same thing to me. There's so many parallels, and coming out as a masculine woman is a transition all in itself. To me, our language, like I said, fails us. It doesn't allow us to have so many varied experiences, and they are so varied, and so many of us don't want to use the language male or female, and we use gender neutral pronouns, and so many of us don't want to transition all the way. So many of us don't want to alter our bodies. So many of us don't want surgeries or hormones. And people like myself, I want to reclaim the ability to use female and woman. And at times the trans story kind of takes that away from me a little bit. I'm so thankful that the story is there. Caitlyn Jenner is a prime example as to how the media covers it is so flawed. But it's giving us a platform to expand on that conversation, and I'm so thankful for it. So regardless of whether or not the conversation isn't quite there and needs some work and is kind of discriminatory in itself, this is more than we had 30 years ago when I was a kid, desiring trucks and not wanting to wear dresses and wanting to play with the boys and get dirty and love cars and sports and what have you. So from my own experience, through all of that, as I grew up, what once started out as a cute little obsession that she'll grow out of turned into a serious flaw in me, and people began to wonder and be concerned about me. And I do experience some dysphoria as a result, some discomfort with my body. And that, I think, also prevented me from being super understanding of what my transition meant to me, and that it wasn't transgender. It was just I needed to fight for the right to exist as the aesthetic that I feel more comfortable as. And so I do struggle with my breasts. A lot of trans people do. A lot of gender non-conforming individuals do, which is kind of how I identify. But even then, I just want to, we can all exist in a binary if we just work and change it a little bit. I don't think that we're going to be able to tear that system down anytime soon, so I don't really want to. I think if we just allowed everyone to operate the way they were, regardless of the language we attach to it, women can be whatever the fuck they want, and we need to start allowing that to happen. But yeah, I struggle with my breasts, but that took me a year and a half of gender counseling and a lot of self discovery and soul searching. I don't wear bras anymore, and that was liberating. Plus I had a back injury, so that helped. It unfortunately also makes my breasts sometimes a little more obvious, particularly summer. It's funny, summertime people look for my breasts to distinguish my gender. Wintertime they look for a penis. People look at my junk a lot. Particularly winter, people stare at my pants a lot, which is kind of funny. Sometimes I like to screw with them a little bit, but like walking through Lougheed Mall with a sock in my pants and my breasts exposed, you should see the looks that happen when you do that. And I mean, really, like, if I'm gonna deal with all the stress that's attached to this, I may as well have some fun with it. But that struggle with my breasts, I remember when they first started growing, I was mortified. I knew my life had changed. I woke up one morning and there one was. And I was terrified and I thought something was wrong with me, but looking back, I knew what was wrong with me, and I didn't want my life to change because everything had been told to me that that's when I need to start growing up, or that's when I need to become a lady. And that's exactly what happened. The world had different expectations of me. What was cute and tomboyish and adorable turned into something deceitful and deviant and wrong, and people didn't hesitate. Family members, like friends, school kids, like I said, all those systems, daycares, doctors, you name it, it comes from everywhere. And though you don't always remember all the specific moments, because fuck, there's too many, but it bombards us, those of us who just want to exist differently than the way our world tells us to. Which is ironic because there's so many women, and they're the ones that I adore, who are innately very feminine and love it and want to be girly, and yet the queer community opposes that and pushes against it and ostracizes them and makes them feel less gay or less a part of it, and fuck, that pisses me off. There's only so many women I can date. Stop shaming them and fuck. Anyways, but there's out in the mainstream world, the ability to perform femininity allows you a rite of passage that people like myself don't get. I think people like myself are more intimately aware of what those expectations are because they've been hammered in us over and over and over again. As a result, I have a lot of depression issues, lack of self-confidence, feelings of being lesser than. It's been a lifelong effort, and it's not just strictly that. Of course it's not. It compounds with everything else that fucks us up over the course of our lives. But because I was told that there was something so wrong with me my whole life, I think there's something wrong with me, and I have to fight it constantly. But deep down I know, particularly now that I am experiencing the liberation that comes with actually being able to be yourself, I'm way fucking happier. I'd do it all over again. Oh God, please, somebody don't make me do it, unless somehow you make me win the lottery along the way. Please no. I don't want to do it again, but I would if I knew I had to come out and be who I am, which I think is pretty awesome. Pronouns. Please don't ever use gender-neutral pronouns with me. I respect people who ask me, and I appreciate it. I think that's good. It means that people are acknowledging that there's more to it than just the expectations of male-female. But I got called it girl and a lot of gender-neutral pronouns growing up. They were used to taunt me, to other me, to make me feel like shit, and it worked. I would rather you call me he any day of the week. I don't actually correct people when I get called male. To me, it's irrelevant. As long as there's not disdain in the tone, I don't really care what I get called. But because part of my journey is to take back the ability to be like me and not just look like me, because as I explained in my previous video, it's so much more than just an aesthetic. It is the very core of who I am. I want to be able to exist like that and be female and be happy. So I use she. I don't care about he. I don't use they. I guess that leads me to, do I identify as cis? Cisgender is identifying as the gender that was given to you at birth. That gender is identified based on your genitalia, which gets complicated for people who are intersex. Look up intersex, but doctors would then determine the gender for intersex, determine the best genitalia for the intersex individuals, because we're so fucking obsessed with penises and vaginas. I am way more than just my vagina and my breasts, and I hate the fact that every day I walk out like this, people are obsessed with my vagina or breasts or lack thereof, or whether or not I have one. But no, I don't identify as cis, because to me, in order for that gender to be correct, if you will, that means you have to identify with all the expectations of your gender at that time. I absolutely did not and do not identify with dresses and skirts and makeup and being subservient to men and not playing sports, not being good at math, not swearing, not being able to like pee outside, so many other things, not being a sexual human being, not being confident, not being smart, not being allowed to have the ability to make money that I am worth, not having the ability to have an opinion in a group, to not be talked over. I don't identify with any of that. And yes, I am a woman, and I want to change how we expect of women. Most of that is still here. Please don't get caught up thinking we've made a lot of progress. We have made progress, but it's not that much, and we need to keep working, because trust me, all of those are still there. I sit in parks just out of curiosity watching children play and how their parents talk to their children, and our children are being so gendered every single day. Look at who wears pink and who does not. Like, we identify our children as gendered so much just based on the clothes we put on them. Try shopping for something other than pink for a baby girl. It is so hard to find, and it goes so far beyond that. But it is still there, and until we start expanding what we allow women to be, I will never identify as cis. But I love me, and I want to be me, and I will continue to be me, and I'm only going to get better and better being me. And I recently made a realization that although I'm constantly striving to be a better person, but that's emotional, and that's being a better person to those around me and living my life based on principles of not silently allowing marginalization to occur by being a bystander. I will put my neck out every single time, but I'm no longer changing myself to be what everyone else wants me to be. I'm not going to be quiet, regardless of whether or not my visual presentation makes people think that I'm more aggressive, because there's something fucked up about masculine women. It's in our community as well. I'm going to speak up. And I work very hard at being respectful when I speak up, but I am very regularly looked at as being aggressive for speaking up, when women who wear skirts and makeup and what have you are automatically considered less aggressive and less threatening, despite being more rude and more verbally violent than I am, and often bigger. And yet were treated very differently. I will not change me. I will not change my clothes. Despite how uncomfortable I feel walking into men's department stores or departments or like anything that is typically considered masculine, I will not ever not do it again. Like I said, I made a realization that I'm going to stop trying to change me to appease everyone else, and I'm just going to start being me. And it feels pretty fucking good. But it's amazing how public my life is about to become, at least from inside of me. But my life is still already very public. I don't leave the house without being watched in some capacity. I don't know what it's like to not be noticed. I was, I guess, lucky, if you want to say it that while I was playing the feminine game, to a certain extent, I was able to pass. I think that was because men found me sexually attractive. Had they not, there would have been something seriously fucking wrong with me. And so both sides of that coin is messed up. But I was noticed constantly. As a kid, I was a tomboy. I was noticed constantly. And now, as a gay woman, I was noticed constantly. And then now, as a masculine woman, I am noticed. So I guess my life is already very public. It's scary talking about all of these things that people have used against me for my whole life, and now here I am on the web talking about it. But I guess I will sacrifice myself and be a bit of a martyr, because that's the only way these things can change, is talking about it. I'm terrified. Our community is small as well, and so talking about this when it's like living in a small town in a big city, and people know you, people always want to talk about your business, and that's scary too. And now things that I feel and do and say and think are now going to be subject to their ridicule as well, and that's scary. So there's a lot that goes into this, but I really think people need to open their minds and hearts, and just because we're queer doesn't mean we're immune to our own judgments and discrimination, and it's in our own community too. So it's not just heterosexual populations, it's not just happily cisgendered people that I want to speak to, it's everyone, and hopefully in some capacity I can start to make people think a little bit. But so there you have it. Am I trans? No. But yes, but no, but yes. I think in a way we all kind of are a little bit. We're all so much more than the expectations, and these expectations are impossible to ever meet. Hegemony is strong and it's powerful, and it's there to make all of us feel inadequate. Men, women, those who don't identify with those labels, we're all experience it. Some of that dysphoria I talked about, I am a skinny butch woman and I have issues with that. It's kind of like short man syndrome, but that stems to what expectations of masculinity are. I grew up being told that men who are skinny aren't quite men enough, and that translates to not being quite butch enough, and I got some self-confidence issues as a result, but I'm trying to fight it. It affects all of us, and I think we need to start talking about this shit. It's not just about dresses and makeup, it's also about who's strong enough and how much you can bench press and how many women you can sleep with, because all of this is so fucked up, it affects us all. So I'm talking. My next video, I'm going to start talking about India a little bit, because it is stirring a lot of this stuff up for me. So I might just film it now. Clearly, it's 24 minutes now, so I'm in the mood to talk. But I'm going to have some tea. I'm going to look at my India book a little bit. You might see me back. All right. Bye. Attempt number 2.